Hey, how you doing? Welcome back to them Brothers from Inglewood podcast. I'm Hoopy, your host, and I'm live and direct once again to share some interesting content, and I hope that you'll be excited about the subject that I'll be mentioning today, which is parks and recreation. Yeah, I'm back in the field, but before I do, I want to ask that you would like, subscribe, share, and ring the notification button so that you'll be abreast as to every time we're airing a new episode. Listen, I want to kind of pick up where I left off and talk about some of the things that took place at the park that we didn't always expect. Now, there was always different elements to the park and recreation community that really happened outside of what we were designated to do. Well, what do you mean? Well, you always had a good element and a not so good element in this environment. Many people that came to the local parks were people that you knew, people that were a part of your neighborhood, people that were related to people that you knew, people that were even related to you. And some of those people had different agendas. And I'm just going to get into a little bit of it because I want you to kind of see that aspect of this environment and culture too. It brought on a culture of its own simply because this was leisure time. This was a place where we congregated, we met, we did a lot of things together. However, it was also a neutral place for people to host different activities of their own. May have not been your interest, but it was always someone else's interest. So, in these parks, it was known for groups, gangs, however you want to, cliques, different organizations within the organization. And a lot of these guys came together, they socialized, they drank, they smoked, they, argued, they debated, they shared, positive conversations, they strategized. So there was an element to the park that we didn't always associate ourselves with because we weren't really a part of that subculture. And everybody who's familiar with Southern California and Northern California know that we've been known for having gangs. We are known for gang activity. And so a lot of these guys who were from these communities or from that community would congregate. It was normal. It was second nature. I remember when my father would take my brothers and I down to Fred Robinson Park, and he would put us on the swings, put us on the merry-go-round, he put us on his shoulders, he, goof around with us, play around with us, and then he would leave us, but under supervision, and he and my uncle or one of his friends or their friends, they would sit, talk, drink beer or drink wine. Back then, probably their choice of wine was probably Ripple, but they would kick it, and it wasn't any disrespect to my brothers and I. My father was there, my uncle was there, and we were under, their supervision. So it was normal. And I say that to set the table because their socialization and their organized meeting really didn't have anything to do with activity. No basketball, it wasn't football, it wasn't baseball, it wasn't softball. It was a time for them to get together away from the girls or away from their women and do what men do. Talk about what men talk about. Well, this is the same thing that took place in the park when it came to the gang element. Now, did we think we were in danger? No. Was there a possibility of danger? Yes, because you had rivals. You had neighboring cities and communities that could easily ride by, walk by, come by this location and start an altercation with the home team. Well, the neighborhood that you were from was usually the neighborhood you were associated with. I said this before in another episode that I wasn't from the turf. I wasn't from, a gang. I wasn't a member, but I was affiliated. I had a social, I would say, resemblance, or I was a part of a community that had a sub-community, okay? And so in California, especially SoCal, we were kind of categorized by the neighborhood that you were from. I happened to grow up in two blood neighborhoods. Inglewood was, when I got to Inglewood, it was 99% Bloods. And that was the group that wore the red, they wore the burgundy, they wore brown, they wore black, and this was the culture. And so growing up in this culture, it was normal for us to say, hey, what's up, blood, to one another, or hey, what's up, young blood, because that's really where I remember the blood name deriving from. When I was a kid, I would hear my uncles, I would hear my father greet, the younger people, his nephews, his nieces, hey, what's up, young blood? And so I just, I assumed that it was a term of endearment. However, as I got older and I was more familiar with these communities and this subculture, I realized you don't say what's up, blood, to anybody. You don't just casually say, hey, what's up, blood, or what's up, cuz, because those things mean something. So the element at the park was also the factions that were formed from these cliques, from these gangs. And believe it or not, there were some very talented gangbangers. These dudes had talent, they had skill, they had ability, and different things turned them. They made choices and decisions that took them away from the possibility of going further in sports. And it was known. We all knew guys that were banging who had special talent, special skill, and they weren't playing because of choices, decisions that they made. Some guys were incarcerated, some guys were expelled from school, and different things took place in their life. And so when I speak of Parks and Recreation having a different element and a different twist, I'm talking about the subculture. I'm talking about the gang culture, the people that were a part of that community, or those collectives that was coming together from other surrounding communities that had similarities, or let's just say they had the same chemistry. They were bloods from another part of the city. They were bloods from, the northern part of town. Whatever that case may be, they came together as one group, even though they were from different factions and things of that nature. So I'm not here glorifying gangs. I'm not here glorifying violence. What I'm saying is in parks and recreation, the reality is you have subcultures. Everybody that's at the park is not at the park to play sports. They're not at the park to be a part of a activity, but they're actually there because it's also their park. They're a part of the community. This is where they come in to spend their leisure time, or this is where they're coming to strategize. It does not matter. The point of it all is being able to assemble at a familiar place. And this is what they did. So while we were playing, while we were competing, whether it was on a basketball court or on the gridiron, which is a grassy field, or maybe a not so grassy field, and while we were out there competing, you had the other groups that were congregating, they were watching, and then some of them would get involved. So now you got a thing to where you got some very aggressive young people, men and women. It wasn't just males in these gangs. There were females in gangs as well. And so we're out here competing. So now someone may want to play, may not be that good at playing, and so they can't really handle the unsuccess, not being successful. So in other words, maybe some what they would call non-affiliate is showing them up. You know, they're getting the best of them. And these type of situations can go either way. Maybe this gang member, he don't like it. He's not a good sport. Maybe he feels a little embarrassed. So now he's in his feelings. So now it turns into an argument. So now you're arguing over a game, whereas this particular person or persons, they no longer see it as a game. Now they see it as a form of disrespect. So I've seen situations just go left, and mind you, we all are part of the same community. We know each other. Some guys don't know each other as well. However, we've either lived in the same community, on the same street, we've gone to the same schools, we have relatives that know one another. We're tied in some kind of way. We're tied in through relation or association, but we're not complete strangers. Now, we may not know what the next person is capable of. We don't know their abilities. We don't even know their temperament. However, we are familiar with that person being from that neighborhood, in that neighborhood, and so on. So that was a very interesting element to our consistency at the Parks and Rec. We knew we were going to see some of the same guys from the same gang, and then we knew that could get hostile or chaotic within that faction. They could be having something going on, whereas a non-affiliate or an innocent bystander, we can't intervene and say, well, hey, why are you guys jumping on this person, or why are you guys into it? Hey, can you cool it? Or why are you guys coming on the court taking the ball? A lot of these things could go left on you, even though you gotta understand this. We have some association and familiarity about ourselves. We know somebody that knows somebody, and now you're at the park, a place where you're supposed to be having fun and exercising and doing all this fun stuff, and now you're into it. So, what am I saying? I'm saying, how do you suppose that we handle hostile environments that were, or let's just say this, it was not set up to be that way, because you're at a park and recreational center where positive things are emphasized. How do you adjust? How do you handle situations that has derived from a subculture? And this is what we were faced with, and that's why I was glad to have a good rapport with the people in my community, the older guys, showed them a lot of respect, and in return I got a lot of respect. And then, I have older brothers, so that helps in a sense to where I'm not by myself totally. At least if something goes on, I got some allies or whatever. Not that it ever came down to that. I think, even people that you grow up with, your friends, your siblings, you're gonna have some arguments. You're gonna have some scrapes and bruises. You're gonna get into some physical stuff. You might have to fight a friend that you grew up with and that you're friends with because of some form of disrespect, or maybe you just need to clear the air. You need to get that off of your chest, out of your system. And I saw things like that happen. I mean, I got into arguments with people that I knew, friends of mine, got into fights and things like that. But I think it was in the spirit of competition. However, it goes bad when people get into their feelings. They feel threatened or embarrassed. It can get ugly at the park, on the basketball court, on the football field. It can get chippy, and a lot of times that's the thing that happens. So Parks and Rec has two elements. It has a positivity in seeing other young people, adolescents, young adults pursue something positive, but also to have somewhere to be and not be idle. There were a lot of things that were happening at the Parks and Rec, such as you had elder groups, meaning you had the elderly people that would come through the day, and they had programs. They had cooking courses. They had ceramics. They had daycare. They had all of these different things happening within the park, and a lot of funding or economic support comes to these local parks because they're usually county facilities. Parks and Rec is usually a county facility that is governed throughout the state. So it goes federal, state, county, city, and that's how the money is actually handed down. So when there are budget cuts or when finances are slim, it starts from the top and it trickles down. So the first person that's going to get cut, city, county, state, and then federal. So if you got a federal job, you'll have a federal job. They don't lay off too much. If you have a state job, at least they're the second one, or the third one to be worried or concerned about having budget cuts. So that's the dynamic of Parks and Rec that I wanted to express in this particular episode, simply because if we don't understand that there's two sides to our development or experience at the park, then we're going to be shocked. We're going to be dumbfounded when things occur. Now, I will end with this. We don't see a lot of young people spending quality time at Parks and Rec anymore. I can go over to Inglewood at Darby Park or Rogers Park, and the basketball gyms are not as full as they once were. When I was coming along, and I know I'm an old head, I get that. I just had a birthday in February, but it hasn't been that long ago that I stopped playing competitively. I'm 57. I think I stopped playing competitively probably at about 49. I think the last men's league that I was in, I probably was about 48, 49. And I was definitely involved. It was the 40 and over Drew League for a notable basketball league in South Central LA. And so shout out to Dino Smiley, his wife, his lovely daughter, and his son for always having something for the community. We look forward to it. You've always been a stand-up guy to keep everybody balanced, and I admire you for that. And your family has always been and still are a tremendous asset to not just the basketball community, but just community period. And so I just want to say thank you. I just thought about that. I want to give Dino Smiley and his family a shout out. So in summation to the subject of Parks and Rec, it was more than just the activities. It fostered a lot of positive things in my life, and I'm sure for you and for your family, your kids now, my kids, I was so elated. I wish I could just put this picture up so you guys can see it. I was so elated to see both of my sons play at the same park that groomed me and their uncles when we were kids. I coached my sons as early as, I believe my oldest boy started playing basketball at 5 years old. Don't judge me. I took him to the Gardena YMCA. No, I'm sorry. It wasn't, I did take him to Gardena YMCA, but we missed the registration time period. And so I took him to Torrance. His first organized team and league that he played on was in Torrance. He was 5 years old. He was the tallest kid on our team. You know, he loved pretty much, you know, playing inside, and so he was our center. And from every team that he was on up until he stopped playing, he was the tallest guy. And I told him immediately before he went into high school, I said, listen, man, you gotta learn how to play guard. You're not gonna be a big man. You're not gonna be Shaq. You know, when you get in high school, kids are gonna be taller, and he noticed that. And my son today is like 6'3", 6'4", and he stopped playing, but he was no longer a center. That's my point. So you dads and you moms that are cheering your kid on because he's the tallest or she's the tallest right now in youth basketball, listen, prepare them inside out, because my son, when he got into 7th and 8th grade, he was like a fish out of water. He was like, Dad, I think I need to work on my handles. I said, you think? So anyway, that was very interesting for my son. And then my middle child, who's also a boy, Jeremy, started when he was about, I want to say Jeremy's first time playing, he was 6. Yeah, he was 6 or 7. And I got a chance to coach him too. And so when I coached Jeremy, I had to, because he was a little more aggressive than Micah. So I had to give him a lot of structure, right? So I wasn't as loose with him as I was with Micah. So Jeremy, after he finished his first season with me as his coach, he told me, "Dad, I don't want you to coach me anymore. I want to play for another coach." And so he wasn't being disrespectful, and he wasn't being mean. It's just that I think Micah understood that I was his coach, whereas Jeremy saw me as his dad. So he didn't like the daddy ball. You know, he felt like I was on him because I'm his dad versus his coach. But it was interesting. It was interesting because at a later time, and I don't mean to make this about my sons, but at a later time, Micah sort of felt that way when I didn't discipline him. I think he had gotten fatigued. He was tired. I knew he was tired. He wasn't in shape at the time. And he had told me that, Dad, my chest is burning or whatever. And I was like, I know, but just, go ahead and keep going. And he didn't process that. And that was the daddy coach conflict right there. So in other words, at that moment, he saw me as daddy, but I was trying to help him understand, no, I'm your coach. And but anyway, it worked out, but he held on to processing that for a while. And so that was interesting because I understood exactly what Micah was saying, and I understood that was significant to him. And so I got a chance later on in life to kind of give that some clarity. So thank you so much for tuning in. I want you to share this, please. I want you to let someone know that we're on and we're sharing quality content. And so I'm going to ask again, like, subscribe, share, ring the notification button. This car is coming to a stop, and so we'll be back. I want you to enjoy the rest of this episode, and we'll talk to you later. Take care. I'm out.